Good afternoon, America. Welcome to Carry the Loads Lessons from the Front. This is the podcast that seeks to inspire us all to do just 1% more for our country in honor of the 1% who defend us from the bad guys every day. I am your host, Todd Boeding, and today's guest is fellow Marine, in this case, not fellow Marine sniper, but fellow Marine, Brian Marren, who just happens to be a sniper. Brian Marren, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you so much, Todd, for having me on the show. I'm excited. Hopefully I live up to the guests you've had on here previously. I'm always humbled when I get a chance to do something like this because you've had some amazing people on the show, and you work for an amazing organization called Carry the Load, which I'm proud to be an ambassador of. I love it. I love the whole concept and idea behind it. When I first heard about it, I was instantly hooked. It made sense to me. And so I've been a part of that for a few years now, which is I'm fortunate to do. So thanks for having me on, man.
Well, if it wasn't for great champions like you of this wonderful cause, then unfortunately, a lot of our brethren who have made the ultimate sacrifice, their names would be forgotten. And so we appreciate what you do in that regard. And for those of you who are not accustomed to seeing long-haired Marines, this is kind of an unusual thing. I've never really had this kind of interaction, especially being on this side of the hair. And I'm catching grief left and right. People are like, man, what is going on? And I'm like, well, honestly, this is the longest my hair has ever been. So this is, some people, when they get to be this age, their midlife crisis is a Corvette. For me, it was long hair. So
yeah,
it's better on you though.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. My wife, she actually appreciates the shorter hair. And right now the beard's kind of getting shaggy. I have to I'm actually getting it cleaned up today. Cause again, the wife goes, I can't see your face anymore. So I don't like that. So I got to clean it up, and it kind of goes in phases, from short to long to wherever, or whatever area of operations I happen to be in at the time as well too. So.
Okay, so for those of you just joining, if you're 10 minutes late, fashionably late today, then you didn't miss anything because we got started just a tad late. But I want to jump right into it. Brian, you are a former Marine sniper. Sniper is a term that can be used kind of loosely in the civilian world for a lot of different in a lot of different ways. But let's just call it what it is. Your job, like a lot of us when we were in, although it was to kill, your job was to kill very, very specifically. And I like to think, though, that, although killing is a horrible thing, sometimes it is for the greater good. How did you become a sniper?
So, it's a great question. One, a Marine sniper is a Marine highly skilled in fieldcraft and marksmanship who delivers long-range precision fire at selected targets from concealed positions. So that's the textbook definition that I still rattled off as soon as you said that in my head from when I went through 1st Marine Division Scout Sniper School in 2005. So I obviously had to learn that a few times because it stuck with me 16 years later. So so what got me into
well, hold on before you even go into all of that. I know I asked the question, and I'm going to stop you before you give me the answer I was asking for. I want you to slow down and say that again so that the person out there who's not familiar with it, they can kind of break it down. Go.
So a Marine Scout Sniper is a Marine highly skilled in fieldcraft and marksmanship who delivers long range precision fire at selected targets from concealed positions in support of combat operations. And that's just a textbook. That's what, if you wanted a definition if you looked up Merriam-Webster definition of Marine sniper, that's what it would be. So now that term then means a lot because technically one of your actually, the main things that you do is collecting and reporting of information. So reconnaissance is really, and surveillance is really what you do the majority of. You're the eyes and ears of whoever the commander is that you're working under or for. So that's why actually even a long time ago, and we still kind of kept the name, a lot of Scout Sniper platoons in the Marine Corps, that's their name is Scout Sniper platoon, but they're referred to as a STAY platoon, which stood for surveillance and target acquisition. So it's actually, you'd think that's like kind of more politically correct way of saying it, but it's actually the older way of saying it. The newer way was the Scout Sniper Platoon. The older way was the Stay Platoon. So it's kind of interesting how those words change, but the majority of what you're there to do is really just IPB, intelligence preparation of the battlefield, by doing reconnaissance surveillance, checking out what's going on. You're that eyes and ears for that supported unit that you're supporting.
So I kind of teased everybody, if they saw the 30-second promotional video, I kind of teased them a little bit and talked about killing for for good. But the last part of what you said actually does tie into that, because the last part of what you said was I can't quote it like you did, in defense of, in
support of combat operations. Yeah.
In support of combat operations. So a guy like me, I was a normal trigger puller. And so I'm moving through the bush, or I'm moving through the fields. I have no idea what's going on up there. Your job, though, is to kind of sit back behind me and look out ahead and make sure there are no bad guys that are about to take me out. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's another use of what a capability of a sniper, another use that you can use for them, as some sort of overwatch for some other element. And that is another way you can be utilized and employed. And, specifically within the Marine Corps, you would actually be part of, there's a number of missions. So you could be part of, one thing I did when I was on a Marine Expeditionary Unit, was part of, back then it was called the Maritime Special Purpose Force. So I was part of a reconnaissance and surveillance element that would insert, let's say, a few days prior to the direct action platoon who is going to hit an objective, right? So there's some sort of objective that's going to be taken. We're going to go in there a couple of days prior. So we're going to do that reconnaissance surveillance. And we're going to set up in a firing position to help support your operation as you come along on the beach and hit whatever this objective is, right? Or from a helo, whatever the insert method is, we're there to support it. And then we're actually there to help, take out those high value targets, take out those different enemy positions that are going to cause either a delay for that raid force, so we're there to support that. It's really what it is. So yes, that in effect, what ended up happening in a lot of places like Iraq and Afghanistan as well, besides just doing a typical sniper mission of whatever that is, it would be, okay, so an infantry platoon is doing a patrol in this area tomorrow, or they're doing a sweep of this neighborhood. We're going to go out there the night before at a minimum, and we're going to set up in some sort of area where we can have a little bit of overwatch and cover that movement and maybe help control some of the chaos that may ensue.
Okay, so I interrupted you, and I think it's pertinent now. How did you get into this?
That's a good question. So I got into this because I'd been shot at quite a few times by enemy snipers. And I went, you know what? This is, I like this idea better than just sitting out here in the open. So my first deployment to Iraq in 2004 to Ramadi in the Al Anbar province was as a grunt. I was in Echo Company, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, 0311. And it was, for anyone who served in the Al Anbar province of Iraq, especially back then, you know what I'm talking about. It was the Wild West at the time, especially a place like Ramadi that kind of wasn't as well known as places like Fallujah and stuff like that. But in 2004 wasn't really well known at all. And everyone who served in that AO during that time was in combat a lot. So I saw a lot of ground combat before I became a sniper, but I had always been interested in that before I went in the Marine Corps. It's just, I was told when I went in, I wanted to go to Iraq. I wanted to deploy. So say the fastest way is you go right over here and you're going to get to you're going to go over to an infantry battalion and you're going to deploy real quick. And that's exactly what happened. And so I had that experience on the ground, and, I felt the effects of what a sniper did. And I just went, and I saw our snipers operating and helped them a couple of times, you know what I'm saying, and worked alongside them, and went, you know what, this seems like a better way to do things than the way I'm doing it right now. I had a natural kind of attraction towards that, working in a small team, highly independent, kind of get to work your own missions sometimes. And the whole element of you're going to go out there, you're going to hide, you're going to sneak around. I mean, it's just like, it's what I did growing up, right? You grow up doing that stuff with your buddies. I just never grew out of it. So that I was generally very attracted to that type of a role.
So you said that you felt the effects of it.
Mm-hmm.
So as a straight leg grunt, Okay. And for those who don't understand, when we say a straight leg grunt, there's different aspects of the infantry. And the most basic form is the Marine rifleman. What kind of effects are you referencing that you felt when you came under sniper fire?
So, I had several incidents. One was literally just taking a knee, holding security out on a street. We had coming back from doing this movement, and I'm behind this concrete barricade with just my head poking out. I'm looking around. We had taken contact earlier, but we're kind of thought everything was sort of done at that point. There was literally a light pole right next to me, and I just hear that bang, and then the round had hit that light pole right near me. I mean, it was right next to me, which means that guy who took that shot had me in his sights and made a bad wind call or whatever happened. You know what I mean? And like, I felt that immediately, like this guy was literally shooting directly at me. And I have absolutely no idea where that shot came from. So psychologically, that's terrifying, right? You're like, it's one thing getting shot at where you can shoot back, where where this person is. But when you look out into a city and you see every open window, every dark alleyway, all of this negative space out there that you're like, they could literally be hiding in any one of those spots, you feel that immediately. And that was at me. And then I also had someone in my platoon. He was shot by a sniper, and it went, thankfully he's fine. He actually was medically discharged from the Marine Corps and was got into law enforcement out on the West Coast and was fine. But he was literally shot in the face right here in the nose, and it came out his neck. And it was so bad that we actually thought he got shot in the neck. No one even saw the little bullet hole right in the face. And what you're looking at right there, that's a perfect shot. If I was taking a headshot on someone, is hit them directly. You want to aim kind of right for that. It's called the T zone in that area. But because of the angle he was at, it didn't go into his brain and his head. He was bent over and it went through his neck and came out, and he survived when we got him medevac and out of there. But when you have that feeling of just, there's someone shooting at you and there's nothing you can do about it. That's what it feels like. You're just so frustrated and angry, and you got to stay low, and you don't know where it's going to come from next. Like, that's that you don't even have to be a good sniper to have that effect on the battlefield. That's how powerful they are. And that's why you had things like, especially in the Al Anbar province of Iraq and other places, you had these insurgent groups, they had rewards out for anyone who was a sniper. If you were a sniper, an American over there, like, they had these, bounties supposedly on everyone's head. And, they would pay extra to their guys if they were able to kill, an American sniper, because they just terrorize the battlefield. And it's a very, very powerful thing that a commander has at his disposal, and that you get to do as an individual operator.
Yeah. In some ways, it's probably more impactful to not kill, but yet wound or scare. Because I'm sure when that round went off near your head, because let's be honest, one person dead does not change the course of a war, unless it's, somebody at a strategic level.
Right.
But, taking your friend out, seeing that, oh my God, he just got hit, not knowing if he's going to survive, all the things that go through your head, now compounded with the other aspect of war where these people have, you guys have families back home. Mm-hmm. Am I going to get to see my kid? Now you start making decisions, correct me if I'm wrong, that can be absolutely influenced by something in such a negative way that it now harms the guy to your left and right.
You're 100% right, Todd. And it's such a massive impact, more than people realize, because add on top of that, what we call in the human behavior terms of what I do now for a living is either the Boogeyman effect or the Bigfoot effect. So when that stuff starts to happen, everyone starts talking. When someone gets shot, and Marines and soldiers and sailors were getting killed, by enemy snipers. So then the stories start to grow. Then it's, hey, this guy turns out, he's some former, Chechen sniper that's been killing Russians since he was 12, and he's 6 foot, 6 inches, 200 pounds and tattoo, like the stories start to grow. And that was the story of the Juba sniper that came out and got really, this Juba sniper that was killing everyone all over Baghdad. Well, it wasn't one person, it was a whole bunch of people. And you know what, it wasn't some highly trained, highly organized, person. It was literally these guys that were given a little bit of instruction, and they weren't 1,000 yards away. They weren't shooting at us with some high-tech weaponry. They were shooting at us with what they had. And guess what? They were getting within 100 yards or less of us. And they were using basic urban masking and social camouflage. They're using things like vehicle-borne sniper platforms where they put a little taxi thing on top and they park next to all the cars and they pop the taillight out, shoot us from inside the trunk 80 yards away. And what is everyone doing? They look up and out when a sniper comes in. So they don't expect someone to get that close. So it was a low level of sophistication and a high level of organization, which is a really, really dangerous opponent. And they gained access to us by getting nice and close, because proximity negates skill. So if you want to shoot someone from 1,800 meters away, you got to have a really, really good weapon system, and you got to have a lot of training to do that. These guys didn't have it. You know what? They didn't need it. And now that fear spreads. And now what happens? Now we're hunting something like Bigfoot. Sorry, everyone, but I don't think Bigfoot really exists. If you got any of your listeners or viewers out there, you know what? I'm not going to sway you from your beliefs, but the idea is it grows. Those stories grow over time, and the next thing you know, it gets larger and larger. And now we're hunting someone who don't know how to hunt.
That was somewhat portrayed in American Sniper with Chris Kyle. His adversary in the movie American Sniper was just what you described. Now, I don't know if that was real or not, and maybe no one does.
Would not. This is nothing to do with that story, but I would not put too much weight on anything told through the lens of Hollywood.
I completely agree. But one of the things, though, that you brought up that I never really thought about is, in the business world, I shouldn't just say in the business world, in life, in human behavior, of which you're an expert, we have a tendency to project onto others how we believe something will go down, or how we believe the other side acts or reacts. So for instance, I'm in a business that's very customer service driven, and bad news is something we don't like to deliver. And so what we do is, rather than deliver that news as fact and as the way it is, we project on that other side how they're going to take it. And we either avoid it or we try to manipulate the scenario to something that's more favorable. In the case you just described, we get shot out. We're projecting onto the enemy how they would do it, because that's how we're trained to think.
No,
I never thought of it. That's a neat
that gets into a lot of just basic cognition biases that all people have, but that's a great one. I mean, you just said you relate it to your own life, of your family or personal or business life where that happens. Well, why do you think some of these messages from all our politicians get? That's exactly what they do every time. I go, okay, well, this isn't going to good. Let's make sure we say it like this, and then all of a sudden everyone goes, even when they're not lying, it comes across that way. Or even when they're, you know what I mean? Like it creates this turbidity. We don't understand it, rather than just coming out and saying, like, here's what we know. This is it. This is all we know that we can prove. We don't want to hear that. We want this. And we brought up too, that's basic, observer expectancy bias. I observing this, I expect certain things to happen, based on my observation. And I bring in all of only what I know, my file folders, my past experiences. So same thing. If I'm a sniper, I was a Marine Corps trained sniper, and then went through other courses in the Marine Corps as well for sniper, the urban sniper course and all this stuff. So I saw the world that way. I didn't know, like, hey, you can do this. Perfect example was we had a sniper team in Ramadi was killed, and some of their weapons and equipment were taken. And so they had one of the Marine Corps sniper rifles, an M40A1 sniper rifle with fixed 10-power unilateral scope on top of it. Okay, that weapon system is what you have to qualify at schoolhouse with out to 1,000 yards. And it's a minute of angle accuracy. So your shots will be within 10 inches at 1,000 yards. You have to qualify out to that, out to that distance. Well, that was a little too complicated for them. So they just pop that scope right off and tack welded a little Tasco, little 4-power scope on top of it, because that's what they can use. And you're going, wait, what? It's like, yeah, I would never do that. I would never think of it that way. And that's the guy that's coming in within 100, 200 yards away, because he doesn't have the ability to shoot 1,000 yards. So why would he? I'm thinking, all right, he's got one of our rifles. He's going to be out there doing the same thing we're doing, but they're not. I mean, it's so we only know what we know. And if we don't shift our perspective, which is really, really hard to do, everyone says, see the world through the enemy's eyes. You got to see it through walk a mile in their shoes. Okay. Well, that's a great saying. That's a platitude. Well, how do you actually do that? Psychologically, to take another person's perspective is very, very difficult to do. So you really have to kind of get to know your enemy, as they say. But what does that really mean? Do things their ways. And one of the ways we did that was we did what we call like a red cell analysis. I'm sure people have heard the term before, but we would go out to different, outside of different Marine, cops, combat outposts, or anywhere where there's, Marines at a fixed position. And I would go out and I would set up like I was trying to shoot into the compound. Some of them had good security. Some of them I would take photos through my scope, with a camera of a Marine standing out in the smoke pit, having a cigarette. Right. And I'm out in town doing this. I'm looking into the base, and I have to come back and say, hey, look, this is what I found out. So we need to move some of this cami netting. We need to put up barriers here. You need to change your security posture because you can see right into there. If you're only looking out, right, that's how you see the world. No one's looking back in at you. So it's changing that perspective is just, it opens the world to you.
Okay. So you explained how you got into being a sniper, and that's an interesting way to get into it. So,
yeah.
So, hey, I don't like being on this side, so I'm going to go to the other side. So now you go through your training. I'm assuming y'all are still going to Fort Huachuca.
No, I went to 1st Marine Division Scout Sniper School in Camp Pendleton. So
okay. And so then you end up back over in country.
Mm-hmm.
You've been through all your training. I'm sure at this point, you've pulled the trigger before, and there's a good chance that you hit somebody on the other side. But the very first time that you're in that position and you've got somebody squarely in your crosshairs, were you asking yourself, can I really do this?
So I'll give you my perspective was, like I said, that first deployment was very, very kinetic, as they say, chaotic deployment. We were getting in gunfights all the time. I mean, it was just, if you were there, and I don't care what unit you were in or what your job was, if you were driving the chow truck, you saw a lot of combat. You know what I'm saying? So I had that experience in a chaotic sense. So I'll flash forward to then 2007 when I'm back in Ramadi. So it's a completely different time and place now. This is during the Al Anbar awakening. We're starting to make some headway. A lot of the Sunni tribes have then turned against what was originally ISI and then Al Qaeda in Iraq, all those groups, because you had some folks, what was his name? The Jordanian guy already, Zarqawi, was running that, and he was going around killing, sheikhs and other tribal leaders, and they were like, well, we don't like the Americans being here, but we definitely don't want that. So they ended up coming over and siding with us, and we started this whole process, right? So it was a different time and place, and there was, we were out on a mission, and we're set up. We'd go to a home at that time for as long as we can, 24 to 48 hours. When it got into really, really hot summer months, you could only bring so much water and stuff. So, and exhaustion would set in, but we were out there for a couple of days, and city's like dead quiet. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, it's just that hot, you're just sweat through everything. You're in this house, you've got your position set up where you can see. At this point, we had different tactics of how we would do it. This one had a family in it, but they had like a connected house. They were staying in it. So we just made sure we kept an eye and said, all right, don't go anywhere. It was kind of, it was hit or miss in how we did it, but that's a whole nother story. And this one was just, like I said, it's dead quiet. So we're looking out, it's just nothing all day long. I mean, literally at this point, we're like, man, there's not even a car on the street. Like, what's going on? So there's something odd. There's something up. We just don't know what it is yet. Right. Then all of a sudden we hear one burst of fire, not far away. Like this has got to be within a couple hundred meters. Then another burst, like 100 meters away, and then another burst. And then all of a sudden, like the city erupts, and we're like, okay, here we go. It's on. I mean, it's on. And then just like you talk about, there we are. I'm on the gun, right? Waiting. I'm checking, because we don't know the situation, but we're not getting shot at, but there is a lot of gunfire, right? So at that point, because of all of our experience and how many times we had been shot at, we weren't like super amped up yet. We're just waiting to see what happens. And what do I see? Guy coming out with an AK-47, and he's poking his head around the corner, just looking around the wall. And I'm like, oh, here we go. And he wasn't looking at us, but I didn't know what he was looking at. So right there, you're looking through the scope there's gunfire going off. He has an AK-47. He's not in any type of police or military uniform, right? But at the same time, it's Iraq. Everyone's got an AK-47, right? That doesn't mean anything on its own. And he starts to bring up that rifle, and you're having that's right there, because the situation was not there. I wasn't presented with some obvious target here. It wasn't someone shooting. It wasn't someone attacking me. It wasn't that. It was just, am I going to kill this guy? Am I going to end this guy's life right now? And then I'm having this doubt about it, not about killing someone, but what if I do this and this guy didn't deserve to die, and I get in a whole bunch of trouble for it, right? Well, what's that? Because you have that power and that authority. You have to be the one to make those decisions on the ground. And I sat there for just a second, literally finger on the trigger. I'm thinking about it right now. I'm like literally sweating from the heat of just thinking about this story. And I'm looking at the guy, and nothing about him said, I'm about to go fight someone. I'm trying to kill someone. Just nothing was there. And that's why I was so hesitant. And he picked up that AK and he started firing it in the air. And then we heard more and more and more. Turns out Iraq just won a soccer game, and everyone in that city was who had any access to a television was watching that game. And when they won, it was celebration time, and they celebrated by firing AKs into the air. So this guy, who had no idea that I was even there, had no idea I was looking at him through the scope of a rifle, almost died, almost bled out on the street because he was celebrating a soccer game. I mean, like, it's just all the emotions are coming back right now. I'm feeling it. You're just like, holy crap. Like, that stuff to me is always more difficult than you're in a gunfight and people are trying to kill you. Like, that's pretty primal, pretty basic. And if you have the appropriate training, you can get through those situations. When it's something in there where you're not sure, when that little bit of doubt creeps in, oh man, that's when that heart starts racing. That's when all those thoughts go through your head. Okay, did he meet the rules of engagement? What has he actually done? Can I articulate my decision of why I made it at this time? Because you remember everything. This isn't, you are trained to a standard, which means you have to operate at that standard, which means you're going to be held to that standard, right? It's a very, very different standard than other folks on some other mission. You are right here, and you were expected, like, you knew or should have known something was going on. So if I had pulled the trigger there, I would have killed this guy. I mean, I would have been living with that the rest of my life, that I killed him for celebrating the win of a soccer game. I mean, so that was like those situations to me
that is unbelievable. Okay. And so for everybody watching this, we haven't talked about this story. I didn't know where you were going.
I didn't remember that story till you just asked me that question. So that's why I'm sweating right now.
I mean, I'm just getting, I'm like, oh my God, he's getting ready to take this guy's life. But yet it was just the opposite. You gave him his life back, and he was euphoric over a game, but that's what it means to them in the midst of their country being torn apart. His life was in your fingertip, and literally, thank God you made the right decision.
I mean, he was just, yeah, exactly. And, can you fault someone for pulling the trigger on that one? I mean, given their experience and what they thought was happening, I always discuss with people, like, having your life, being in impending danger and feeling like you're in impending danger are no different to your brain, whether or not you are actually in a life or death situation. Your brain doesn't know the difference. If you think that you are, if you feel that you are, then you are, and you will act accordingly. So if you don't have that balance, that counterbalance to go, wait a minute here, let's pause a second. Are we absolutely sure? But then everyone will tell you, hesitation kills, and then you could get, but but not in this situation.
But
So
it could have easily gone the other way.
yep.
And that hesitation and I know there are situations, and you may have come across one. You may have been involved in one of those situations where you called it wrong the other way, and it led to one of your own men being harmed. And so, I mean, there's got to be a little bit of God factor there in some ways, that you just, sometimes you got to just let it go and you follow your instinct as best you can. But I mean, let's be honest. Had you killed him and you would have been wrong, every manual would have pointed to you were in the right. But public opinion.
So this gets into understanding the tactical, operational, and strategic level implications of your actions, right? So every tactical decision you make has an operational certainty and a strategic unknown. And that's a quote by Greg Williams, my business partner. And what that means is things were going well at that point for the most part, meaning we were working with the local Iraqis at the time to secure and pacify the Al Anbar province of Iraq, which is no easy task, right? What if me killing this 15-year-old kid, what chain of events would that have set off? What if I did pull that trigger and he died, and he was the local, governor's son or nephew, and he was there, that's going to come out as what? He was executed by a Marine sniper for celebrating a soccer game. We're never going to get that back. You can't unring that bell. There's no coming back. I mean, how are you going to, I mean, that's the thing, is that because of the way war is now, that happens. Those decisions at that ground level have major strategic impacts, and that's it's a lot to put on. I think I was 24 at the time, or even younger for some guys. You know what I mean? So you're a product of your training and your life experience, and so you can train to that standard.
So that was a phenomenal story, because again, it gave me a slightly different perspective than I was expecting, but it went the other way too, where you did actually pull the trigger.
No, so you want to tell more stories? Yeah, man. Like it's not. I don't know. It's not what people think, I guess I would say. So this goes into my experiences. What happened more so on my first deployment were far crazier. My first deployment as just a grunt in Iraq versus being a sniper operating, because it's such a different world almost. It's a different feeling. And plus I had those experiences to build on. I never had an issue, we'll say, in those situations, because, I was a product of training. I knew I was making really informed decisions. I made my best judgment call every single time. I saw mistakes that people made, errors in judgment that were not, they thought they saw one thing and it was not that thing that they saw. And maybe some people died that didn't need to die. But from that perspective, any person in that situation would have made the same call that individual did. That is really tough. And those situations always stuck with me. But also you understand that, like, you're there to do a job, and that's what you signed up for. That's what you trained for. That's what you deployed for. And that's what you think about doing. So, I have a different approach to it sometimes, is almost like when I step out on a mission, like I'm never coming back. Now, I don't mean that in the way some people would take it, meaning I'm not thinking about anyone back home. I'm not thinking about this. I'm thinking so focused just on that mission that nothing else in the world matters, because I may die on this mission and I don't want to, right? All humans have a natural aversion to want to die, right? We want to survive. But once I step out, like, I'm not coming back. That actually allows me to make much better judgment calls than thinking about something else and going, oh, what if this over there? Hey, none of that shit matters. Excuse me. Sorry. None of that stuff matters. We're here to do a job. And Now dealing with that stuff later on is a whole nother discussion, but it'll come back to bite you if you don't know how to process that stuff. But I never had an issue with those things. It wasn't something that it was like I was there. The people I was fighting against were trying to kill me, and
Yeah.
they would have done the same thing. And I actually had a same thing that happened, or another thing that happened to that deployment, that it was kind of an eye-opening experience for me. Just how eye-opening it was didn't really hit me till kind of years later when I really thought about it. But one of the things I did was we had this kind of, there was a Iraqi commando unit, right, of the Iraqi army that was kind of, we were doing some work with, and we were at one of the company FOBs, forward operating bases, we were operating out of in the south part of Ramadi. These guys were down. There's a squad of Iraqis, and they're great. They're awesome, right? And so the thing was, I was going to do some training with them. They were going to run some ops together and see what happened. They were kind of on loan, and like they were, just like kind of got thrown on us. And I'm like, okay, well, who are these guys? I'm talking through an interpreter. I was like, well, who gave you the training? And they were like, oh, the Navy. And I was like, oh, okay, well, so the one part of the Navy that's over here doing any type of training with a commando unit. Got it. Like, so these guys are probably pretty good to go. They're trained by the SEALs, you know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, I know what that means. So I'm working with him and talking with him, and we do a little bit of training together, kind of build some rapport. I show them some stuff they've never seen before, so they thought it was cool. We're taking this break, and I'm just talking. One of the guys started talking to me because they asked, like, where are you from in the United States? And I said, I'm originally from Chicago. And they're like, oh man, yeah. And they started, oh, Chicago, bang bang. And I was like, that's everyone's response. I was like, dude, we're in Iraq, come on, like it's. And they were like, yeah, dude, it's no different. And I was like, all right, easy. So they asked me, and I asked this guy, where are you from? He's like, I'm actually originally he's like, I'm from Ramadi. I'm from like the north part. He's like, I'm normally based out of Baghdad, but like I have family here and stuff. And I was like, no kidding. This is in 2007. And so I'm like, this is all through the interpreter. And I'm like, well, where were you a few years ago? Where were you in like 2004? What were you doing then? And he's like, yeah, I was fighting the Americans. And I don't know if this dude was messing with me. I don't know how, if that was true, but he looked right at me and said it. And I was like, oh, okay, that was me. I mean, now the likelihood of the two of us shooting at each other, I don't know, but meaning if that's true and he was doing that, that was me and my unit. We were there at that time. So I'm sitting here like, that's a lot for a 24-year-old to take in, to go, okay, wow, I'm really getting a real street lesson in how geopolitics works, right? And how this is one gray area, and you're literally your enemy one day is someone you might be fighting alongside. And I sat there and just took it all in, and he didn't seem to have a problem with it. And we had a further conversation. He's like, look, like we didn't ask for any of this, but you know what? You guys aren't going anywhere. And I don't like what these guys are doing to my city, and they're attacking my family. They're attacking the tribal elders. They're attacking the mosque. They're doing this. You guys are causing problems, but I know that's not your intention. So I want to fight these people. And I was like, all right, man, like high five. We can go fight Al Qaeda in Iraq together. Like, let's go do this.
So he was able to literally judge you based on your intentions.
This is through an interpreter and what he was saying. And I had no reason to believe that this guy was like making it up, but it was kind of like I took it as he's trying to take what he thought was like the lesser of two evils for him. You know what I mean? I guess that would be the way to take it. Sure. And just sitting there, we talk about perspective, man, that gave me but I thought of it this way. You know what? If I was 16 years old, 17, 18, 25, right now today, if a country invaded the United States and took over, right, and they were in our cities and they were telling us what to do, what would I be doing every day with my friends? Oh, we'd be fighting them. Like we'd be fighting them in the streets. We'd be doing whatever we could. So like, I get that. I would do the same thing. That would be me. Right now, that doesn't mean I'm some, Islamic fundamentalist. That's not what this meant in this guy. But if that's the group that's going to arm me and train me, like maybe I would be fighting for them too. You see how that works? So
yeah. Well, they're giving you the resources and the training to stay alive at that point.
And so now I'm in a group that, even though I don't really like share their ideological beliefs, I get what they're trying to do, and I want to help, and I want to do my part. I don't have to be all in to be in for some other reason. So it gave me a really, really good, like I said, kind of, I don't know, a street tutorial on how the world works, and shifting alliances and how things aren't black and white and it's not binary, and you got to be able to adapt to that. And it was a really, really kind of powerful moment that really hit me later on. I was like, geez, man, like that's a lot to take in at that age.
Okay, so you somehow found yourself, once you got out, you found yourself in police work.
Uh, so I'm not in law enforcement, but I do a lot of training of law enforcement. So
Right.
I've worked still for years with the military, even after I got out of the military, for the Marine Corps, and then every other branch, doing all kinds of stuff. Did some,
Yeah, and I wasn't
yeah,
real clear on that, but you found yourself in that world, training in
yeah,
that world. But what's an interesting parallel is, I was talking to one of our good friends of Carry the Load, who is a police officer, and I remember him one time telling me what a lot of people don't understand about PTS is that a lot of these guys coming out of the military, they never dealt with their PTS before they jumped right out onto the street. Now they're fighting bad guys again, never
yep,
dealt with it. At some point, they're a rubber band pulled so tight they're going to snap.
yeah.
Did you find yourself in a position where you had to address some of that
I
before you could actually go counsel others
yeah.
in the human behavior side of things?
Absolutely. And so first of all, too, veterans do not have a monopoly on mental health issues. Everyone's got them. And that comes in different ways, especially with post-traumatic stress. That could be from anything, especially in law enforcement too, because they're seeing this stuff every single day, day in, day out. And what happens is the same thing. You start to normalize these reactions. But what happened with me is I was working on a project with the Marine Corps. I was at the tactical level of this really, really cool, really big project that I luckily got to be kind of a fly on the wall for, called the Fight JCTD Future Immersive Training Environment, blah, blah, blah. It was a big DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, kind of funded this whole thing. They're doing a lot with training, specifically on Camp Pendleton. And there's a training facility there called the Infantry Immersive Trainer. I was there like when it first opened, basically right after. One of the first people I got hired as a tactics kind of analyst to bring Marines through training. And they're doing all this testing. And one of the things, because it was originally an idea by General Mattis, even before the war, he wanted a Marine's first firefight to be no worse than his last training evolution. Okay, well, what does that mean? How do you do that? So they brought in all the big brain scientists, had behavioral health folks. I mean, just behavioral scientists doing cortisol testing, trying to create realistic training scenarios, do stress inoculation, right? So I'm going to expose you to a certain amount of stress so that physiologically your brain gets a little bit, just like an inoculation, like getting a flu shot. You get a little bit, okay, I get a little sick, but I don't get really sick when I get the flu, right? It's the same concept of what inoculation is, but for stress. So they had all these folks there, and I would be like kind of like the translator. Like I would run the Marine squad through and then work with the scientists, because they were the big brain folks that didn't know how to talk to Marines, and the Marines didn't know how to talk to them, kind of thing, just because they're both there for different reasons, right? So I was like, okay, I'm here to help do scenario development and design and implement some of this stuff, right? So I was like the conduit there. And I offline would get to talk to all these really big brain scientist folks, right? And one of them was like, well, Brian, like how do you handle all of these experiences you had? What is it like for you? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm totally fine. Like, I sometimes I get like a little upset or angry, but I know, how to deal with it. It's like, okay, can you give an example? I was like, yeah, one time I was out with my buddies and we were at the bar and we were hanging out, we were having some drinks, and this guy said something to me and it just like really, really pissed me off. And all I could think about was grabbing him by the back of the head and bashing his face into the bar. I could picture it in my mind. That's what I wanted to do. So I knew I was upset. So you know what? I paid my tab. I went home and just, sat on the couch and hung out, at home. And so this is a group of just behavioral scientists standing there with their mouth open, like, Brian, you are not okay. And I was like, what do you mean? Like the guy was being a jerk. And I was like, yes. But your reaction was an overreaction, meaning you don't have to get upset at that. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, what he said did not justify your response physiologically in your head the way you're thinking. You don't have to think like that. And it was like this little light bulb moment where I'm like, oh, so you're saying I'm the problem. Oh, well, why didn't people just tell me that? I can control me. Like, what the hell? And it was just like this epiphany. Now, it took years to work through that and figure that out and learn everything, train myself how to sleep normally. You know what I mean? What is that like? Have relationships with people outside of the military or who have never been in the military, right? And but that was a big eye-opening experience that I had. It was just like, man, you don't even realize where you're at. And I called it, I was living my life at my front sight post. What that means is I can't see past the front sight post of my rifle. You know what I mean? I'm at bang thinking. I'm thinking about the target right in front of me, and that's it. There's nothing else in the world that matters. Now, that's a really good mindset in very, very small amount of situations in life, right? You know, especially in combat. Yeah, that works. But not being able to take that step back and reset, it's just from that cycle that I was in. It was train, deploy, train, deploy, train, deploy, train. And then I started doing it again when I got out doing security work and stuff. So you're in that loop. You don't ever exercise any tactical patience. You don't ever get to stop, look up and go, hey, what's over that next ridge line over there? Yeah, I know I got this stuff going in front of me, but I got to start looking up and out. And part of that's age and emotional maturity and life experience. You know, you have a lot of that, but that perspective is huge. And it's just, once I had that, it was like, oh man, I got some work to do. And it took a while. I mean, we all do. It's a continuous process.
Well, there's a lot of it's just flat out maturity too.
Part of it, yeah, it is. But you can gain maturity by having those reflective moments, right?
So your experience as a sniper. Okay, so now you are with a company called Arcadia Cognerati, I believe is the how you pronounce it.
Yep.
And it's all about you through training, you can modify, alter, condition your behavior.
Yep.
And so did your training as a sniper prepare you for this?
Oh, yeah.
Were you already dispositioned to go down this road?
Both. So yes, the training did, because it's an observation. So what I teach is what we call human behavior, pattern recognition, and analysis, which is a scientific way of saying something that you've been doing your whole life. Think back to Todd, even when you're a little kid, whoever raised you, mom, dad, grandma, and grandpa, aunt and uncle, whoever it was, when they walked in the room, before they ever said a word, you knew whether they were happy, whether they're sad, or like in my case, I'm about to get a whooping, so I got to go run and hide for whatever I just did, right? You knew that. So you're reading human behavior. That's human behavior pattern recognition, but we don't actually get any training in analysis. What ends up happening is we get a lot of psychological explanations for things. We get a lot of, hey, this is what someone's motive was for doing this. And that's all great, but that's all after the fact. What we teach is how to identify pre-event indicators. So I go back to that story of the guy that I'm sitting here going, this guy's about to shoot this rifle. There's gunfire going on, but what is it? I'm not picking up any indicators on him. Now, in 2007, I didn't have the words to describe what I was seeing, but I knew it when I saw it, but someone else might not. I knew it from experience.
So there was something instinctive there.
Yes, but from my experience, but that's from experience. You get an experience of a bar fight. You know what that looks like. You're in a fight in high school or something. You know what that looks like. You know what anger cues are. I don't have to sit here and tell you, well, the physiological reaction is you have these cilia hair-like fibers, and your hypothalamus will kick off warnings through heat, and then I'll give you what's called the histamine cross, and I couple that with the activated corrugator muscle. You don't get taught any of that stuff. You don't need, but you know it.
Because I have no idea what you just said.
Well, but that's what's actually happening. Mission focus and predatory looks. That guy with that AK did not exhibit any mission focus, meaning mission focus is you're walking out of the grocery store and you're late to pick up your kids, and you've got 6 bags in your hand, and you're looking for your car that you don't even see the car coming that almost runs into you, right? That's mission focus. All right. We get that all the time. When you're so focused on doing something, you bump into another person or you don't open a door, right? You're so mission focused, right? If I couple that with what's called predatory looks, those anger cues, right? I have that furrowed brow, it's down, right? And I start to get upset. My nose starts to flare out to bring in more oxygen. Those are predatory looks. If I combine those two things, that's danger. That's the guy walking in to shoot the place up. That's such a strong indicator. I didn't have those words, but I knew what it was. Well, now what I teach people how to do is how to articulate that. So you can be as far left of bang, right? On that timeline, meaning but I can see these events happen before they do, because I'm recognizing the pre-event indicators and I'm acting on those versus waiting for this to happen. Because this guy is a perfect example that I brought up, was just, I never got those danger cues from him. So I didn't feel like I needed to kill him. Now, had I seen that and that weapon came up, well, that's different, right? Then I could have killed him right then at that point because I saw that. But at least I would have words to identify what I saw. So I'm a better witness. I know how to articulate it. And this is why we get so much into law enforcement, because so much of these situations that you see played out in the news, it's the worst analysis. The talking heads on the news are horrible at analyzing this stuff. It's all junk. And then even the people on YouTube talking about tactic stuff, you're like, stop. You're starting at bang. Look at all of these things that occurred beforehand. We can identify those things there so we can mitigate the event. That's what I get to do now for a living, which is really cool. So the sniper experience obviously added to it, and I had a natural ability, and then on top of that, a lot of training and education. I mean, I've been doing this for a little while, so it's been a long time of a lot of study, independent study. Get a master's in applied psychology as well. So like it's really been my thing. But all of those experiences really kind of informed where I was going in life with this.
So I was going to call it like, a sexier way of saying psychology, but it's far more than that. Because it's not just how people think, but it's what they're thinking, how they translate it into their physiological reflection. Is that?
Yeah, no, that's great. And because that's a good way to describe.
I'm trying to sound smart,
no.
Brian, but every now and then I might come,
No, it's an intuitive skill set. But what we focus on, Todd, is what is your intent? Because that's really what matters. So my example of this guy that I almost killed, what was his intent? Well, his intent was to shoot an AK in the air to celebrate a soccer game. It wasn't to kill anyone. So I don't care what his motive was. I don't care what group he belongs to. I don't care what religion it is. Human behavior is universal. So if I focus, and this works for social media, you're reading through someone's post or you're listening to someone's message or whatever it is, what is their intent? Because they could say the most awful, terrible things about people and this, that, and the other thing. But if they're never going to leave their mom's basement, then they're not really a problem. And in fact, we have the freedom to say all that stuff in the United States. And that's a good thing. I want those freedoms. I want that person to be able to say that. I don't agree with it, but I always try to establish what is this person's intent. And if I look for that, I'm less likely to do what? I'm less likely to apply my own worldview on this other person, right? I'm less likely to say, oh, that sniper's 1,000 yards away because that's what I would do, right? I just go, what is this person's intent? What are they trying to do right here? And all humans demonstrate that intent with their behavior, with what they say and how they say it and what they're going to do.
Man, that is interesting. And so but it's not just in assessing a threat as far as, I have to defend myself. It goes far deeper than that. And I know you've worked with a lot of our carry the load relay team as far as really teaching them situation awareness. In about 90 seconds, can you explain how, we use situation awareness a lot. It's embedded in our vocabulary and our mental makeup. What is situation awareness to the average civilian?
So the idea is there's situation awareness and there's situational awareness. So situation awareness, I'm aware of my situation. I know what's going on. Situational means it's kind of like the next step. But the idea is, it's great to be aware of your surroundings and you're looking around going, okay, this person's doing that. This person's doing that. But so what? What are you going to do with that information? That's where we come into play. Is we teach advanced critical thinking. What's likely going to happen next? What is that person likely going to do? If you think that person is going to do something harmful, what are you likely going to see next? And if you don't see that next, then maybe they're not doing something harmful. So I have to look at what's the most likely course of action that's being happening here? What's the most dangerous course of action? And then I gather artifacts and evidence to prove either one and see which way it goes. So the idea is human attention is finite, right? We only attend to so much in our environment. Your brain's operating at 100%. Here's the thing. it can only do one thing at 100%. So the second you're driving and then now changing the radio station and talking on the phone, that 100% gets divided between those three tasks. So when people who say like, oh, I'm really good at multitasking, nope, don't listen to those people. They're horrible at it. No one is good at multitasking. In fact, they've done studies and taken people and said, hey, who's really good at multitasking? And that group raises their hand and says, we are. And then the other group says, oh, we suck at it. And they put them through a bunch of tests. Guess who do better on multitasking tests? The people go, look, I suck at it, because they focus on one thing at a time. And that's all your brain is wired to do. So attending to things in your environment, that's what situational awareness is. So simple things for people is we're so hooked on our phone because it's developed by brilliant neuroscientists and social psychologists who know you inside and out. And you're so fixated on it. You've created these habits, these human behavior patterns, right, that have created a habit. That's what a habit is. It's a human behavior pattern. So if we can just set those down and take a look around every once in a while, you're going to see a whole lot more. So there's a lot to get into with it, but it's just, what do I want to attend to, to my environment right now? What do I want to pay attention to?
Man, I honestly, we could probably spend another 2 hours talking. I mean, I'm just an inquisitive guy by nature, and
fire away. I've got some time, so
I've got all these questions that I want to ask, and unfortunately, we got to wrap it up at some point because you have to go get a haircut.
I do. My wife would be very happy too tonight when I come back for that. That's just my surprise for her tonight. Oh, I can see your face. So.
Well, I've got some ideas on how we might be able to talk a little bit more and get some good stuff out, because you have a great perspective on things, and I really appreciate how much how open you are with this information. I don't even think we got to several of the stories that you had in mind when we started talking. So I hope you will agree to join us again at some point. But one of the things that we always like to do, I always want to know about who you're carrying, to this day, because carry the load, obviously, we've talked about it. It's all about making sure that we do Memorial Day better. And the way we do that is by honoring those who are no longer with us and making sure that their memory stays fresh. So who are you carrying?
So this year, in fact, I've been carrying a Blue was his call sign. Tyler Buse was a reconnaissance Marine who ultimately fell victim to his struggles that he could not deal with. And he was an amazing person, and he was a great Marine. I didn't know him in the Marine Corps. I knew him afterwards. We'd worked together, and just a loving father, and who was struggling with stuff, and no one knew. And well, people close to him knew, but didn't know it was that bad. And this is why I tell veterans to, we have to take care of each other, and we have to be good to each other, and we have to reach out. It's not just the posting on social media and saying, hey, if anyone needs anything, here's my number. One thing, Todd, I'd like to share with you that I try to do is the beauty about like Facebook and some of these social media apps is that it tells you when it's someone's birthday. So if I know that person pops up, hey, it's so-and-so's birthday, if they're a veteran, I text them or call them, but usually it's just a lengthy kind of text. And I say, hey, look, I just want to let you know, one, happy birthday, but two, this is why I appreciate you. This is what you're doing that's good in the world. And it could be one little thing. Hey, I noticed that you love posting photos of you and your kids. I know you went through a rough divorce, but man, those kids really love you. And I can tell that in that photo. You don't know how powerful that is. That literally could stop someone from killing themselves. And I think we need to do more of that now. Certainly if we're veterans, you're not deploying anymore. You're not in the military. So let's take care of each other then. I mean, that should be our focus. It should go from that we're fighting to now we're healing, and we're building a community, just like Carry the Load is doing, man. The beauty of the whole concept of Carry the Load, right? Todd, you know what? There's some things you're better at me. You're better than me at. And you know what? So when it comes to those things, you're going to have to help me out. There's some things I'm better than you at. And when it comes to those things, I'm going to help you out. I'm going to help carry your load. And if we just take that and really apply it as much as we can, I think we're going to help the veteran suicide situation. And I know we're going to help each other out and become a stronger nation and community for it.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you sharing that about Blue, and everything you said is spot on. Brian, this has been a fantastic time with you. I don't care if anybody watched this. Just, I mean, honestly, I came away a hell of a lot smarter. You gave me a lot to think about. So thank you very much for being with us. And ironically, our next episode is with a gentleman by the name of Matt Thomas. And Matt Thomas served with First Cav, works with one of our nonprofit partners, Farm. And he's going to be talking to us on Tuesday, October the 19th about transitioning and some of the challenges that you just mentioned. So
that's great. And Todd, one, I appreciate you for having me on. And that's a big one too. I hope folks listen to anything. That transition is way bigger than people realize. You don't even realize it. It takes you years. You're still like, what? No, I'm fine. I transferred out or I transitioned out. It's like, dude, you're still in the same mindset you were then. And so I hope that's a discussion I get to listen to and watch.
Well, I'll invite you to watch that one, and I'll invite you back again to talk. So
anytime. Thank you for having me on.
So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Again, my name is Todd Boeding. I'm carrying PFC Corky Groathouse, United States Army of Vietnam era. Who are you carrying?